Did you know that there are two kinds of guilt? There's a guilt that's based on love and a guilt that's based on fear. Now, Paul was talking about the spiritual kind of guilt that leads us to God in 2 Corinthians 7:11 when he said, "Godly sorrow brings repentance that leads to salvation and leaves no regret, but worldly sorrow brings death." Even though he was talking about a spiritual kind of guilt that leads us to God, he was making a really astute observation about the two different kinds of guilt. You see, the healthy kind of guilt, or godly sorrow, is a guilt that's based on love, and it makes you feel bad when you've hurt someone that you love and you want to make it better. That's the kind of guilt that helps us make things right. But there's a neurotic guilt, or Paul calls it a worldly sorrow that leads to death, that just goes on and on and on, and it doesn't lead to anything good at all. And I know you know people who are caught up in that kind of guilt. So what's the difference? Well, the healthy guilt that makes you want to make things right is shame-free, but the guilt that's based on fear is rooted in shame. And the difference is that guilt is based on what you do, but shame is based on who you are. So the neurotic kind of guilt that goes on and on and on and never ends is based on the lie that you're not worthy of love. Now, we know that Psalms 139 says that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's the truth about you. But if you believe the lie that you're not worthy of love, that you're defective and that you're worthless, then whatever kind of guilt that seeks to hide that shame is going to go on and on and on. Now, a common example of this is when people get divorced and they say things like, "Oh, I wish I had not been so focused on making money. I wish I had bought her that house." Or she might say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't focused so much on the kid." Well, that's focusing on things they did. That's guilt, right? But really what they're trying to do is escape a feeling of shame. See, because if he didn't leave you for what you did, then he left you for who you are. And that's much, much worse. So people try to get away from their shame by hiding it with neurotic guilt. So if you've got the kind of guilt that goes on and on and on, here's a hint. Your problem isn't really with guilt, it's with shame. That you're believing the lie that there's something defective about you that makes you unworthy of love. So you need to replace that lie with the truth that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Then you can have the kind of shame-free guilt that leaves no regret. Over the last couple of decades, psychologists have spent a lot of time studying the difference between guilt and shame. They've come up with the fact that guilt is about what you do, but shame is about who you are. Guilt that's free of shame is relatively healthy. But shame, the belief that you're not worthy of love, causes all kinds of psychological problems. I've been so impressed with this research that I now have written a book about it called Overcoming Shame, Letting Go of Others' Expectations and Embracing God's Acceptance. If you want to find out about the difference between guilt and shame in your life, then I suggest you pick up a copy so you can learn how to overcome shame for you.